I lived in that house for 2 years before the night that changed everything. It was a typical college rental, the kind of place where 6 roommates split the rent and learned to navigate each other's schedules and quirks. We had parties on weekends, study sessions during finals, lazy Sunday mornings where we all crowded into the kitchen making breakfast and complaining about hangovers. It felt safe, familiar, like the kind of place where nothing truly terrible could ever happen. I was wrong about that in the worst possible way. November in northern Washington always brought early darkness and cold that seeped through the windows no matter how high we cranked the heat. That weekend started like any other. My roommates going out to parties and bars while I stayed home, exhausted from a long week of classes and part-time work. I went to bed early, around midnight, while the others were still out. The house was quiet when I fell asleep, just the usual creaks and settling sounds I had learned to ignore over the months of living there. I woke up sometime after 4 in the morning to the sound of voices. At first I thought my roommates had come home and were talking in the hallway, maybe a little drunk and louder than they realized. I remember being annoyed, thinking about how I had an early class and needed sleep, but not concerned. People coming home late was normal in a house full of college students. I rolled over, pulled my pillow over my head, and tried to drift back to sleep. Then I heard something that made my eyes snap open. A thud, heavy and solid, like something falling or being dropped on the floor above me. Then another sound, harder to describe, somewhere between a gasp and a cry that cut off too quickly. My room was on the first floor, directly below one of the bedrooms upstairs, and sound carried easily through the old floors and thin walls. I lay there frozen, listening, my heart starting to pound, even though I did not yet understand why. The house went silent again, completely, unnaturally silent. No footsteps, no voices, no sound of doors opening or closing. Just that heavy quiet that feels wrong when you know other people are supposed to be home. I told myself I was overreacting, that maybe someone had dropped something or stumbled while drunk, that everything was fine and I should go back to sleep. But something kept me awake, some primal instinct that recognized danger even when my conscious mind refused to accept it. I heard footsteps then, slow and deliberate, moving through the hallway upstairs. Not the familiar rhythm of my roommates' walks, but something different, heavier, more purposeful. The steps moved from one room to another, pausing at doorways, and with each pause my fear grew stronger. I wanted to get up, to check on everyone, to call out and ask if everything was okay, but I could not move. Terror had frozen me in place, my body refusing to cooperate with what my mind was telling it to do. The footsteps descended the stairs. I could track their progress by sound alone, each step bringing whoever it was closer to my floor, closer to my room. They passed by my door, so close I could see the shadow of feet blocking the light from under the door frame, and continued toward the back of the house. I heard the sliding door that led to the backyard open and then close, and then nothing. Just silence again, deeper and more terrible than before. I do not know how long I lay there, too terrified to move, trying to process what I had heard. Part of me wanted to believe it was nothing, just roommates coming home drunk or moving furniture or doing something that had a perfectly reasonable explanation. But another part of me, the part that kept me frozen in my bed with my door locked, knew something was horribly wrong. When the sun finally came up, I found the courage to leave my room. The house was too quiet, none of the usual morning sounds of people getting ready for class or making coffee. I climbed the stairs slowly, my legs shaking, and that is when I saw the first door standing open, the room beyond it visible in a way that made my stomach drop. I did not go inside. I could see enough from the hallway to know I needed to call for help. I ran back downstairs, grabbed my phone with trembling hands, and dialed emergency services. My voice barely worked when the dispatcher answered, the words coming out in gasps and sobs as I tried to explain that something terrible had happened, that my roommates were not responding, that I had heard things during the night, but did not understand until now what they meant. The police arrived within minutes, flooding the house with officers and paramedics and people in protective gear. They made me wait outside while they went through the house, and I stood on the lawn in the cold morning air, watching neighbors gather and whisper, knowing from the expressions on the officers' faces that it was worse than I had imagined. 4 of my roommates were gone. The people I had lived with, laughed with, shared meals and late-night conversations with, were all dead, murdered while I slept 1 floor below. The guilt came immediately and has never left. I heard everything, the footsteps and the sounds and the moments when I could have done something, called the police, screamed, done anything except lie frozen in my bed convincing myself it was nothing. The investigators told me later that there was nothing I could have done, that calling out or intervening would have only added me to the list of victims, but that knowledge does not ease the weight of knowing I was there, alive and safe, while my friends were being killed just feet above my head. They caught him eventually, a graduate student from a nearby university who had been watching our house, studying our routines, planning his attack with the kind of methodical precision that makes my skin crawl. He confessed, avoided the death penalty, and will spend the rest of his life in prison. But that does not bring back the people who died, does not undo the trauma of that night, does not stop me from waking up at 4 a.m. convinced I can hear footsteps in the hallway. I moved out of that house the day the police cleared it as a crime scene. I could not stay, could not sleep in that room knowing what had happened above me, could not walk through those hallways without seeing the shadows and hearing the sounds that will echo in my memory forever. I left college, moved back home with my parents, and spent months in therapy trying to process the survivor's guilt that threatened to drown me. People ask me how I am doing now, if I have moved on, if time has made it easier to bear. The truth is that some things do not fade. I still check every lock multiple times before bed. I still cannot sleep on the first floor of any building. I still wake up in the middle of the night listening for sounds that should not be there, my body remembering that terror even when my mind tries to forget. The worst part is not what I saw the next morning or the months of investigation and trial that followed. The worst part is knowing that I heard everything, that for those crucial minutes when my friends needed help, I was paralyzed by fear, unable to act, and that hesitation is something I will carry for the rest of my life. I survived that night, but I am not sure I will ever truly escape it. If you ever hear something that feels wrong, if your instincts scream that danger is near, trust that feeling. Call for help. Do not wait. Do not rationalize. Do not convince yourself it is nothing, because sometimes the sounds in the dark are exactly what you fear they are, and hesitation can mean the difference between life and death. I learned that lesson too late to save my friends, but maybe someone else can learn it in time to save themselves. My GPS showed a town called Millbrook Valley directly on my route, a perfect halfway point where I could stop for gas and food during my cross-country drive through rural Montana. The map displayed it clearly, streets and buildings, and even reviews for a diner that supposedly served the best pie in the state. But when I reached the coordinates where Millbrook Valley should have been, I found only empty grassland stretching in every direction, no buildings, no roads, no sign that humans had ever lived here at all. I checked my phone 3 times, confirmed I was at the exact location the GPS indicated, but there was nothing except prairie grass and silence so complete it felt like the world had been emptied of everything except me and my car, and the growing certainty that something was very wrong. I tried to search for alternate gas stations, but my phone insisted Millbrook Valley was right here, showed street view photos of a main street with shops and houses, displayed business hours for places that did not exist in the empty fields surrounding me. Then my fuel light came on. I had planned to fill up in Millbrook Valley, had been running low specifically because the GPS promised a town at this location, and now I was stranded in the middle of nowhere with maybe 20 miles of range left, and no idea which direction would lead to actual civilization. I chose east, following what my paper atlas showed as the nearest highway. But after 10 miles of driving, the GPS started insisting I had made a wrong turn, that I needed to go back to Millbrook Valley, that everything I needed was waiting there if I would just return to the coordinates. I ignored it and kept driving, but 5 miles later I saw buildings ahead, a small town appearing on the horizon exactly where my map showed only empty land. Relief flooded through me until I got close enough to read the welcome sign. Millbrook Valley, population 847, established 1952. The town my GPS had promised, somehow real now, somehow existing in a location where moments ago there had been nothing but grass. The streets were empty despite it being mid-afternoon on a weekday. Shops lined the main road with lights on and open signs displayed, but I saw no people walking, no cars parked, no movement except curtains blowing in windows and doors swinging slightly in wind that I could not feel. I pulled into the gas station, an old-fashioned place with pumps that looked 40 years out of date, and when I got out of my car, the silence was absolute. No birds or insects or distant traffic, just emptiness that felt like the world was holding its breath. The pump worked when I tried it, gas flowing normally, and I filled my tank while watching the empty street and trying to understand how an entire town could exist without people. The diner across the road had customers visible through the window, shapes sitting in booths and moving around the counter. But when I looked directly at them, they seemed to flicker, there one moment and gone the next, like images projected onto glass rather than actual solid bodies. I paid for gas at the automated pump, my credit card going through despite having no cell signal, and got back in my car planning to leave immediately. But when I started the engine, my GPS showed I was no longer in Millbrook Valley, but back at the empty coordinates where the town should have been. And when I looked up at the buildings around me, they seemed less solid, more transparent, like they were fading or like they had never been completely real to begin with. The GPS gave me directions to leave, a simple route that would take me back to the highway in 15 minutes, and I followed it desperately, driving past shops and houses that flickered like bad television reception. But 15 minutes became 30, then an hour, and I kept passing the same landmarks, the same gas station where I had filled up, the same diner with its flickering customers. And I realized the GPS was leading me in circles, showing different street names but returning me to the same locations, trapping me in this town that existed and did not exist simultaneously. I tried driving in a straight line, ignoring all roads and GPS directions, just pointing my car toward where the horizon should be and accelerating. But the streets rearranged themselves, the town stretching and bending so that no matter which direction I drove, I ended up back on Main Street, passing that gas station for the 20th time. And the GPS just kept recalculating, kept showing new routes, kept promising I was almost out when I knew I was never getting out. Other cars started appearing, parked along the streets in positions they had not been before. And when I looked inside them, I saw drivers slumped over steering wheels, some fresh and recently trapped, others decomposed to skeletons, all of them still gripping their phones, showing GPS maps of Millbrook Valley. The town was a collection, a trap that appeared on navigation apps and lured drivers to coordinates where reality was thin, where a phantom place could become solid long enough to capture vehicles and consume the people inside them. The sun never moved. I drove for what felt like hours, but the light stayed constant, stuck in perpetual afternoon, and my gas gauge never dropped below full no matter how many miles the odometer claimed I had driven. Time worked differently here. Or maybe time had stopped entirely, and I was caught in a loop that would repeat until my mind broke or my body gave out, or I became like those other drivers, just another skeleton slumped behind the wheel of a car that would never escape. I am writing this on a notepad I found in my glove box because my phone died hours ago. The battery drained despite being fully charged, and I need to document what happened, so if anyone ever finds my car, they will understand this was not driver error or poor planning, but something that uses technology to hunt. The GPS is still working even with my phone dead, still showing routes through Millbrook Valley, and I understand now that the device is not trying to help me leave, but is keeping me here, is feeding something that exists in the space between where maps say things are and where they actually exist. The flickering people in the diner are watching me now. They stand at the windows with faces that are almost human, but not quite, expressions that suggest hunger and patience and satisfaction that another traveler has been collected. My GPS just announced I have arrived at my final destination, but I never entered a destination into this device, never told it where I wanted to go, and I realize it has been guiding me here since the moment I turned it on, that every route I have ever followed was leading to this phantom town, and I was just traveling the long way around before finally arriving at the place where navigation technology stops pretending to serve humanity and reveals what it has become, a hunting tool for things that exist in the spaces we cannot see, waiting patiently for the next driver who trusts a glowing screen more than the evidence of their own eyes telling them to turn back before the town appears and the trap closes and the endless afternoon begins. Hello, SSG Animations. My name is Chris, and this is the most terrifying experience of my life. This happened when I was a kid, growing up in the Appalachian region of West Virginia. What you're about to hear is not fiction. This really happened to me, and 3 of my friends. For privacy, I'll use fake names. You can call them Leo, John, and Charlie. To this day, I still wish none of us had ever gone out that night. It was the summer of 2011. We had just finished 10th grade, and like most stupid teenagers, we wanted to celebrate. Someone suggested exploring an abandoned cotton mill hidden deep in the woods. I think it was called Beckley Mill, or something like that. John's older brother had been there once. He warned us not to go. That should have been enough. But we went anyway. Charlie didn't want to come at first. He had a bad feeling about it. We laughed it off, called him paranoid, and eventually convinced him. That night, we lied to our parents and said we were staying at a friend's house. By the time we met up outside our local Walmart and started walking, it was already around 5 p.m. We didn't realize how far the trail actually was. By the time we reached the area where the mill was supposed to be, the sun was already sinking. We had maybe 1 hour of daylight left. That's when we found it. The mill was worse than we expected. Collapsed walls, rust everywhere, nature slowly swallowing it whole. Still, we tried to enjoy ourselves. Drinking sodas, joking around, pretending we weren't scared. That's when I noticed Leo. He wasn't talking. He was staring into the woods, with a look on his face I'd never seen before. I wanted to ask him what was wrong. I didn't. That was my mistake. By the time we finished messing around, it was fully dark. The only light came from the moon, filtering through the trees. When I checked my watch, my stomach dropped. 9:30 p.m. Leo finally spoke up. He said our parents would eventually start calling each other. We needed to leave. That's when Charlie panicked. He said he felt like someone had been watching us, like a man standing just beyond the tree line. We tried to calm him down, told him he was imagining things, but Leo didn't laugh. He just stood there, scanning the darkness. As we walked back, something felt wrong. The woods were too quiet. Then we heard it. A strange, low vibration, almost like a hum. It came in short bursts. At the same time, we heard twigs snapping in the distance. Not random, intentional. We reached a clearing we recognized from earlier. Halfway across it, everyone stopped at once. I looked at Charlie. The moonlight revealed his face, and all the color had drained from it. I asked him what was wrong. He didn't answer. He was staring to his left. So was Leo. So was John. Then I looked. At first, I couldn't see anything. Then my eyes adjusted. About 150 feet away, I saw it. A silhouette, tall, at least 6 feet 5 inches. Unnaturally thin, like it hadn't eaten in weeks, and on its head, something that looked like a goat skull. At first, I thought it was running away from us. Then my blood turned to ice. It wasn't running away. It was running toward us, fast. We ran. John was already ahead. Me and Leo followed, but Charlie was falling behind. I knew if we didn't do something, it would get him. So we turned back. We grabbed Charlie and pulled him forward. And then, I looked behind us. I wish I hadn't. It was maybe 10 feet away, roaring. A sound like a demonic scream, almost like an Aztec death whistle. It was wearing clothes, medieval-looking peasant clothes, but they were too small, like a child's Halloween costume stretched over something that didn't belong in it. The fabric was torn to shreds, and it was closing in, fast. I grabbed Leo and ran downhill as hard as I could. I don't know how, I don't know why, but it didn't catch us. That night, we never saw it again. We split up and went home. My parents didn't believe me at first. Then they saw my face. I was grounded, but something told me they knew this wasn't just a lie. Days later, I met Leo, and what he told me still haunts me. He said that thing had been stalking us from the moment we entered the trail. Every time he looked away and looked back, it was closer, 3 feet closer. Again and again. By the time we were drinking sodas, it was only 20 feet away. He didn't say anything because he didn't want us to panic. He just wanted us to leave alive. We're all doing fine now, but that night never left me. And what scares me the most is knowing what would have happened if Leo hadn't noticed it at all.